What's a quote that permanently changed the way you look at things? People don't think about you as much as you imagine they do. Similarly, I've heard this as don't worry about what others think of you because in most cases they don't. I always find these hard to believe cause I think about other people a lot of the time. Socializing is just like any skill. You need to practice before you're good at it. My mum, comforting me when I was struggling to make friends. My buddy Josh has autism and will occasionally ask me why anybody would even like him. I tell him I don't know man, we just do. It's not the answer he's after, but it's the answer nonetheless. There's a Buddhist quote, don't believe everything you think. Very much related to mindfulness and the idea that you are not what you think. Sometimes we have bad thoughts that we only think because we physically feel bad. That doesn't make us bad. Just observe and let the thoughts pass. I love this one. Resentment is like taking poison and waiting for the other person to die. When seeking revenge, dig 2 graves. Confucius. Similarly, holding on to a grudge is like not pulling a thorn out of your foot because you were not the one who put it there. Use what talents you possess. The woods will be very silent if no birds sang there except those that sang best. Henry Van Dyke. Thank you. I like this a lot. It reminds me a lot of something my grandmother used to say, which is that all singing is good singing as long as you make a joyful noise. I miss her every day. A ship in harbor is safe, but that is not what ships are built for. John Shedd. My best mate's favorite quote was smooth seas never made a skilled sailor. Pearl Harbor. The pain I feel now is the happiness I had before. That's the deal. C.S. Lewis. Oof. Gut punch. Grief is the loss of what we love. Oof, you just lost a lot of progress. That's a real punch in the gut. Bennett Foddy. When I became a man I put away childish things, including the fear of childishness and the desire to be very grown up. C.S. Lewis. Since it is so likely that children will meet cruel enemies, let them at least have heard of brave knights and heroic courage. Otherwise you are making their destiny not brighter but darker. C.S. Lewis. Lewis and Tolkien, both in and out of stories, have some of the best quotes. The first draft is just you telling yourself the story. Terry Pratchett. I'm not sure why this quote struck me so hard, but it completely changed the way I approach writing. Just get your ideas down in run-on sentences and asides to yourself and loads off, at parts you haven't figured out yet. It took me more than 30 years to realize that a first draft isn't just a rough version of the final draft. It's a map for yourself, and no one else. We're all critics, we're all so good at recognizing what's shitty about something. But then we're all so bad at making something. So just make something bad and then criticize it until it's good. Dan Harmon. This is fantastic advice for programming too. Get something down and working, and then refactor, rework, to get it into a presentable, maintainable state. Too often people try to get an elegant solution on the first try, and take forever to get something basic working. Edit. I want to specify that you should refactor before code review. This, just like a book, is meant to get you to a working solution faster, that you can then clean up before giving to others. There's not a lot of things worth caring about. Told to me by a close friend, and it really helped me get over my insecurities and self-consciousness. Think of things this way. After you leave school, there will be 2 types of people in your life, your friends/family and strangers you will never see again. You don't need to worry about being insecure and self-conscious with the first group because they love/like you and so it really doesn't matter. You don't need to worry about being insecure and self-conscious with the second group because you're never going to see them again so it really doesn't matter. Don't sweat the petty stuff. Also, don't bet the sweaty stuff. I visited Pearl Harbor this week and the one that struck me was, there were many acts of heroism that day, not all of them recorded. It reminds me that even when nobody is watching, it's still important to put forward your best. Character is what you do when no one is looking. It's a shame many people forget this when it comes to shopping carts. End of BoJack Season 2, it gets easier, every day it gets easier, but you gotta do it every day, that's the hard part. My favorite BoJack quote goes something like, "Here's the trick to being happy, just pretend you are happy, and eventually you'll forget you're pretending." Also from BoJack, when you look at someone through rose-colored glasses, all the red flags just look like flags. It's easy to fool someone, it's hard to convince them that they've been fooled. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. One of the saddest lessons of history is this: if we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We're no longer interested in finding out the truth. The bamboozle has captured us. It's simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we've been taken. Once you give a charlatan power over you, you almost never get it back. Carl Sagan. Just because you lost me as a friend doesn't mean you gained me as an enemy. I still want to see you eat, just not at my table. I've been dealing with a few fizzled friendships/relationships lately, and this is so on point. The last thing I wish for is for them to be fucked over. At the same time, I don't need to see your face, woman shrugging. You can't blame a blind person for being blind, you just don't let them drive your car. We have to realize a lot of stuff in life is beyond our control. We have to learn to live with it. The good and the bad. You cannot convince people to love you. This is an absolute rule. No one will ever give you love because you want him or her to give it. Real love moves freely in both directions. Don't waste your time on anything else. Cheryl Strayed. Fake love is mighty convincing in a world where real love is mighty rare. There's a lot of narcissism in self-hatred, David Foster Wallace. Self-disgust is self-obsession, Manic Street Preachers. Oh wow, that hits hard. Everyone is somebody else's weirdo. Can I adopt a weirdo? I know one similar, we are all, at least a little bit weird. Not sure the exact quote, but don't play chess with a pigeon. It'll just knock over the pieces, shit all over the board, and then strut around like it won the game. In reference to arguing with unreasonable people who refuse to and or are incapable of considering viewpoints outside their own and employ logical fallacies to justify their position. Edit, apparently it's attributed to a guy named Scott D. Weizenhofer in a comment he made in a book review on Amazon. It's a take on Mark Twain's "Never argue with a fool, they'll bring you down to their level and beat you with experience." And, by Christ, was he correct? Edit, apparently this wasn't actually a quote of his. And whomsoever argues with me will be a fool, so I refuse to bow to such metafuckery. Shout out to you /Darth Mart for correcting this fool. It's possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not weakness. That is life. Captain Jean-Luc Picard. The opposite is true as well, you can make all the mistakes and still win. 7 billion people, someone's rolling all nat 20s. Any team online game players ever. Honey, I hope it's the worst thing that ever happens to you. From my dad when I was complaining about something. He probably didn't intend for it to be deep or anything, but it puts things in perspective. I think of it all the time. Sometimes I have to tell myself, if that's the worst thing that happens to me all day, it will be a pretty good day. Wow. That's my kind of optimism. Draw a monster. Why is it a monster? I like this one. I wish it need not have happened in my time, said Frodo. So do I, said Gandalf, and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. Many that live deserve death. And some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Then do not be too eager to deal out death in judgment. That quote never fails to make me tear up. I also really love, and I know it's not in the books, but when Galadriel asks Gandalf why he chose Bilbo in The Hobbit, he says, "I do not know, Saruman seems to think it takes great power to defeat a great evil." But that's not what I've found. It is simple acts of kindness and love that keep the darkness at bay. Why Bilbo? Perhaps it is because I am afraid, and he gives me courage. People fail to realize that Gandalf is not a wizard, he is a Maya. In short, an angelic being on the same level as Sauron, who finds a small hobbit's courage inspiring. It's beautiful to me. Tolkien fought in World War I. He saw the horrors of that war, and in spite of it all, had the wisdom to know that it wasn't the generals, politicians, or great leaders that ended the war. It was the young men fighting, the mothers back at home sewing uniforms, the young children that gave the men something to fight for. It's absolutely beautiful. Subscribe for more hot Reddit takes in your inbox, guaranteed.